Yo, so our film today is Beast. Yes, this is the brand new joint. Where am I? This is the brand new joint from Tyler Atkins. It was written by David Frigerio and Russell Crowe. Frigerio came up with the story, you know. The film's produced by David Frigerio, along with Tim O'Hare, John Schwartz, Michael Shores, and okay, they're on production. It is co-produced by Jamie Arscott, executive produced by Shane Abbess, Tyler Atkins, Drew Bailey, Barry Broker, Alicia Brown, Mary Jane Bolesco, Alistair Burlingham, Jimmy Custis, Charles Durfman, Mark Duncan, right, Ruth Ann Frigerio, Arcady Gulabovich, Andrew Lee, David Lipper, Daniel MacPherson, Miles Nestel, Annette Dominique O'Hare, Josh Pomerantz, Gary Raskin, Kelly Rogers, Kalia Scooby, Kyle Smithson, Brett Thornquist, Marlon Vogelsang, Michael Weiss, Stan Wertelieb, Lisa Wilson, and Russell Crowe. We have got line production from Nelson Corey. And what else? We have also got Susanna Wolf on post-production. Right, Brian Cassia took care of the score. Right, we have Tomaz Labanca on cinematography. Todd E. Miller edits the piece. You know, Marianne Jade handled all the casting duties. Right, Sam Hobbs is production design. Lucy Gale art direction. Set decoration is Martin Williams. We've got Nicola Dunn on costume design. Hair and makeup, we have Holly Anderson, Natalie Black, Tristan Lucas, Winneby Trang Nugent, Ruby Russell, Alia Savaliv, and Micheline Su. Right, handling our stunts, we have got Michael Gale, Galen Foster, Mark Duncan, Alicia Liz Davis, Sean Harnett, Oscar Mackey, Nathan Newman, Cyrus Ning, Juliana Ramos Ortiz, Adele Samos, and Bren Foster, who choreographed the fights. Okie dokie. Right, so then that takes us to our cast. Right, playing Patton James is Daniel MacPherson. Okay, his wife Luciana is played by Kelly Gale. Their daughter Maddie is played by Sol Carrico. Okay, so Patton's brother, right, Malon, is played by Mojean Aria. His wife, Nadine, is played by Safira Moran. Okay, then we have got, right, Patton's trainer, Sammy, played by Russell Crowe. Okay, Sammy has got a daughter who now trains, Rose, right, played by Amy Shark. And our villain, right, Xavier Grew, played by Bren Foster, right? That's a fight choreographer, yes, and ex-fighter, you know. His manager, Gabriel, Gabriel Stone, is played by Luke Hemsworth. We have got Patton's friend, Neil, played by George Burgess. Who else in the film? There's Herb Dean, our referee, right? Who, obviously, everyone knows Herb Dean. Well, if you know fighting, you know Herb Dean, right? So he plays himself. We have got the podcaster that interviews Xavier, right? Played by Josh McKenzie. Barry is played by Matt Nable. Tony, played by Eliza Matanigu. The US sports reporters, played by Callan Coley. Chattery Sitatong, right? The head of one, obviously plays himself. Demetrius Johnson. I didn't see Demetrius. Must have been a brief scene. Got Dom Lau, plays himself. There's Martin Nugent in there. Joshua Calabau, right? A fighter. Hamish McKeever is one of Patton's training partners. Xavier's coach is played by Liam Reznikov. Isabel is played by Zumi Edgerton. Caitlin, played by Rocky Figueiredo. Yeah, that's the main cast, essentially, right? So what's the film about, you may ask? Well, MMA legend Patton James, now a commercial fisherman, is pulled back into the cage when his brother is in danger. Reuniting with his old coach, Sammy, he commits to one final fight in one championship against the brutal champion Xavier Grew. Yeah, not quite, right? He's with his ex-coach's daughter now, right? So yeah, that's the film. It's an interesting one, right? Because I think this is the first film one have kind of let use their branding, you know? It's like Roadhouse was the first time the UFC did that kind of thing. Because, you know, you don't want to attach yourself to something that is going to be like terrible and crazy and weird, you know? So we have that. And also, right, remember, Russell Crowe has been in one of the really good fight films, you know, when you think about that, right? Cinderella Man. Do you remember that film, people? Oh man, if you have not seen it, it is freaking, it's so good. So good. It's, boy, it's from a long ass time. I'm trying to think of when this damn film came. It's like, it was so long ago, right? I think it was early. Wait, was it in Cinderella Man? Am I thinking of the right? I feel I'm thinking of the right. You know, you watch so many films. You know what I mean? You're just like, wow, am I losing my mind here? I believe he was in Cinderella Man. Um, Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, it doesn't really matter, people. Right? The big thing is like we've had a lot of fight films. Not all of them work, right? Not all of them work. Um, and I think that's the thing. So, and I think as fighting, you know, MMA has got bigger and more recognizable, I think people look at these things, right? You can see the mistakes, right? You can see where this doesn't really hold up, right? This like people don't fight like that, right? When you think about things like Never Back Down, you know what I mean? That are just it's not a great film. It's not a great film at all. No, you know what? It wasn't. It was Prize Fighter. My bad. Prize, but that wasn't a great film. I can't think of who was Cinderella Man. He was in Cinderella Man. That was 2005, right? Played Jim Braddock. Yes. Oh man, I did think I was losing my mind for a second. And that was a great film. And so when you watch Beast, you can see that they're trying to hit all the right beats, right? You've got an ex-fighter who's at the top of his game. And, you know, there's a break from fighting, right? But he gets pulled back in. How does he get pulled back in, right? Because one of his loved ones is in danger, right? So we're doing all of this thing. And then he's in this big fight, you know what I mean? You know how these things go, right? There's obviously going to be a death involved. So they're like, yes, what do we need? What do we need to capture people, bring people in? And so they give us all of these things. Now, the acting is good, right? There's nothing wrong with the acting. The production is really well done. I wasn't quite sure about the fight choreography, right? Now, obviously, look, when I say the fight choreography, I mean, they've made it look slick, right? The fight flows and all of this. Now, is the fight realistic? No. No, the fight is not realistic, right? And there's so many components to that, right? It's just, I think there's the ease of escaping moves, right? No one escapes from like certain locks and holds in the way we see it, especially when it is locked in. Now, you can have people, and especially later on in a fight, right, when everyone's sweaty and slippery, then you see more escapes in certain ways. But when you have something fully locked in, that's difficult, right? It's a process of breaking that hold. And you know what I mean? This film does not show any of that, right? It's like fully locked in, escape, fully locked in, escape, and you're just like, wait, what? Like, what are we doing? You know, there's some craziness, and they could have, as I said, you can escape a hold, right? Maybe in the transition, right? It's not fully locked in to show that it's not fully locked in, right? Then I think it would have been better. But I think they're just like, oh, it has to look really high stakes. It's gotta, you know, and that's where you can lose people that are trained, people that are straight fans, right? That watch all the time. You can lose them because, you know, those things, you know, they're so obvious, right? So obvious. It's funny as well because there is one fight and a fighter is slow, right? They're getting a little bit, not necessarily gassed, but hurt, right? And then in their next fight, they are so much faster. They're not getting rocked by, you know, the shots that we saw them get rocked with in the other fight previous. So there's these inconsistencies in it. But it's, I think, with the story, right? So we start off and we have Patton going into a big fight at one. And then just as he walks out, we cut 10 years later. Now he's a commercial fisherman working on this boat. And it's not very good, right? They're not very successful. They don't catch anything. The captain's a dickhead, you know? And it's just all of this, right? He's estranged from his brother. We don't know why. And his brother takes a fight, gets injured, right? That's the big kind of thing to try and get him back into fighting, which is, you know, all of this, right? And the injury his brother gets, the thing being, I mean, there's just so much, like, there's so much to it, to then even think about, like, his brother's next fight, right? It makes absolutely no sense. Absolutely no sense whatsoever. It is crazy. Because the thing being, gosh. Well, let's just say the result of the fight, right? For the other guy, it's a problem, right? Because you organized it, you filmed it, right? So in organizing it, you set the location. And the location is nuts because there's no real mats on the floor or anything like that, which makes no sense, right? The floor's dirty, which again makes no sense, right? You've planned this whole thing so you would at least make it look decent, right? So it's just like the floor situation, the location, because with all the places you could have found, why with what's there, you know what I mean? Like, why you wouldn't have picked that spot, right? And in picking that spot, you've now opened yourself up to a whole heap of shit. So there is that. And it's the right, it's the timelines which are a bit foggy here, right? They're a bit foggy because the original fight with Patton and Xavier, well, first of all, you get how much time you need. 6 months. You got 7 weeks, which is just like, oh, just say the date, right? What are we doing here? This is silly. But from that point, right, we don't really know how much time has actually gone, right, for when they actually do fight. Because, yeah, there's no indication. And you get the sense it's definitely not 6 months, right? Which, again, when you think about what went down, there's got to be time, right? There's got to be a time difference. You know, because we had the meeting with one, right? So what then is the time? And even the last fight, it wouldn't have happened. The last fight wouldn't have happened. Right? That's the thing that makes no sense whatsoever. It's definitely not getting sanctioned by one. It's not getting sanctioned by any sort of commission. You know? Now, I do think the whole commissioning thing is slightly different in Singapore. I think that's where one is, right? I believe, right? And I think the sanctioning boards are different. It's not like the California, Nevada, and right. It's not the same as those, but they do have, a sanctioning situation. So that fight ain't getting sanctioned. It really isn't. It's definitely not happening under the one banner, and it wouldn't be for the championship. Right? It wouldn't be for the championship. Because if you strip someone, if there's all this other stuff, right, it would be the number one contender against someone else. But it wouldn't be this fight. Right? So there's a lot of things here where you're just going, this doesn't really add up. Right? Doesn't make any sense. Right? Just Patton, he's been out of the game for 10 years. Right? 10 years was his last fight. He's trained, he worked on a fishing boat, right? So, you're lifting up things, carrying things, so there is functional strength. But stamina, just all of these things, not gonna really probably be there. And when we see the training montage, right, it is just a little bit, the training montage is weird, it's weird. And then the whole training partner, and it's just like, oh yeah, we can get him down, all of this kind of thing. So you have that, but then the second training, you're like, okay, where's the intensity come from? Right? And then all of a sudden it's like, rah, 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 screaming after everything. And it's just like, firstly, it's not being filmed. So I don't think anyone does that, right? No one does that. It's just weird, right? It was a weird situation, That whole thing doesn't really make any sense, And that's the thing, right? As I said, the acting is good. The choreography, the action, right? The camera work, they bring you into the fight and all of that. They handled it pretty well, But it is like the story does not. The story doesn't work on any level, right? It doesn't make any sort of sense. The fight choreography doesn't really make any sense. And as I said, Bren Foster is a, he's a former fighter. You know what I mean? He used to, I think, Taekwondo, right? I believe it was Taekwondo is what his kind of discipline was. Yeah, and I think a few other things, right? But not mixed martial. I don't believe he's fought mixed martial arts, right? And you just think with so many former fighters out there, work with one of those, right? To understand how that fight would go, because it's a lot different from kickboxing, taekwondo, Muay Thai, right? There's a different feel to it. There's a different energy to it. So I think working on that would have been, that would have made it look and feel better, right? Now, as I said, it hits all those emotional points. So if you don't really know anything about fighting, right, but you enjoy a sports film, this will work for you, right? I think if you enjoyed stuff like Never Back Down, you know what I mean? And there's a few of the one, I forget the weird one we looked at on Prime Video from a couple of years back. But there's been a lot, right? So if those ones, you like them, this will work for you, right? It's a bit like in Warrior, how, you know, everything happened in the one night, and you're just like, nah, that's really not, right? It's really not. There's the other thing that's very funny, right? There's when you think about Herb Dean and recent fights, right? There's an incident at the end of a round, and you're just like, considering, right, the Pumi fight, no. Right? Considering the Pumi fight, no. And even without the Pumi fight and how they fucked that up, it's a case of, right, at the end of the round, you go to your stall. You know what I mean? You go to your stall. So if you can't, fights off. Right? So it's that. There's a few other things, right? Eye pokes. You get 5 minutes to recuperate from an eye poke, not 1 minute. You know what I mean? Like, you've got 1 minute. Like, that doesn't happen. You get 5 minutes, right? To kind of sort yourself out from an illegal blow. So you have that. There's point deduction, all of those things. I think the other big thing, one has a different rule set. Knees are allowed, right? On the ground, knees are allowed. That's how Demetrius Johnson lost his first fight there, right? So knowing that the rule set in just that last fight, right? They're on the ground. There's points when any one fighter would have rained these, and they do not. There's also mad illegal blows to the back of the head that aren't called. Right? There's some weird things considering the rule set and everything that aren't necessarily called. So yeah, it's odd. It's an odd situation. I don't know, man. But I think if you're not really tied into the sport, if you have never trained before, it will be fine. You will be okay with it because, as I said, it hits those things, right? They're building situations up. Even though it's silly, like the podcast interview, the sports journalist interview, terrible interviews, right? But they do the thing of building, right? Of building. And when I say terrible, I mean they're just not that good. But, right, we've seen Ariel Harani and other people do similar things, right? So it's not out of the norm. I'm just like, right? So it builds up the tension and all of these things. It gives you those emotional pull points, right? So it works on all of those levels. Acting is good, right? The little kid, Maddie, right? She does a great job. So all of this stuff works. It's just the story is not very realistic, right? That's the problem. And the fights, right? The story fights, not realistic. But that's the thing, right? The film, it was in cinemas in the States, not in the UK, but it is hitting digital on the Monday the 1st of June. So if it feels like it's something for you people, go check it out, all right? Beast.